Let's start with the Anthony Albanese address today, and particularly his response to my question to him on China. It's interesting, he says he doesn't think there will be an automatic reset in that bilateral relationship if you do win the upcoming election. What are your thoughts?
Well, Kieran, good afternoon. And you know, your question was really quite insightful because it points to one of the biggest challenges whoever's in government will face after the next election, and then that is how to act in the national interest in the face of a China that has changed its posture. Anthony clearly made the point that when it comes to Australia's relationship with China, he doesn't hold the current government, the Morrison government, to fault because what we've seen is China change its posture. But we cannot look at China as if it's a binary choice, right? There is no world in which China does not matter. So when it comes to our relationship with China, we need one where we're standing up for Australian interests, our national interests, where we're standing up for our democratic values, and where we are also seeking the best trading relationship that we can have with an important economic partner.
He was keen to praise China as well in the sense of what they've achieved over a number of decades in elevating people from poverty. So that is a different nuance to what we've seen from the government in recent times.
I think it's just a fact. It's a pure fact that people in China have seen their living standards improve. I think what Anthony was really pointing towards is that China is an economic powerhouse. As Penny Wong has often said, there is no equation in which China does not matter. I thought Anthony's other interesting point, and where I think we can point to some failures of the Morrison government when it comes to dealing with the role that China plays in our region, is he criticised the withdrawal of aid to the Pacific region, that Australia is stepping back from that at a time when we should have been stepping up, because if we're stepping back, it leaves a vacuum for others like China to step into.
Still on foreign policy, the Ukrainian representative in Canberra says it sends the wrong message for our government to bring back diplomatic staff and to urge Australians to leave Ukraine. Can you see his point?
Well, I think it's important, one, that we acknowledge that Ukraine is a sovereign nation and that we insist upon their sovereignty and their democracy, and we stand up as their ally and their friend. And my thoughts right now are not only with the people of Ukraine, but indeed many Australians of Ukrainian background who will be worried about family and friends at home. I think it's important, too, that the Australian government act to ensure the safety of Australian citizens, particularly those civilians who are in the Ukraine, and that must be our highest priority, to keep our citizens safe. And I do, and Labor does, support the actions of the Morrison government when it comes to the withdrawal of our non-essential embassy staff and family, and indeed the warnings that have been issued to Australians about the need to travel to the Ukraine and to reconsider that.
Going back to the Albanese address today, because there are a few other issues I want to touch on. One is the rapid antigen tests. He was scathing on the government when it comes to their handling of that. But there are millions coming over coming months. Do you see a scenario where obviously there's some annoyance right now, given the lack of supply, but we get to the election in May and people will be thinking, OK, things are back on track and the supplies arrived and hopefully this Omicron peak has passed. The timing might be all wrong for the opposition on this.
Well, you know, I would hope that we weren't having a debate about rapid antigen tests. You know, I don't see this as a bonus for the opposition. I see this as a drawback for the nation, that we've had a failure on securing supply for rapid antigen tests. And, you know, this is going into the third year of this pandemic. We have had in the first year the failure on national quarantine. We have had in the second year the failure on the vaccine rollout. And now into the third year, we've got a failure on the supply for rapid antigen tests. We've got a failure on children's doses for vaccination.
But does Labor need to say more than just we'll give free tests, because there's no costing involved? We don't know how much that would cost the government if you do win.
Well, PCR tests are free right now. And quite bluntly, Scott Morrison had warnings from his own backbencher, Keneally. He had warnings from the business leaders last year. He had warnings from the Australian Medical Association. He had warnings from the trade unions that we needed to secure sufficient rapid antigen tests, and they needed to be available to the Australian people. Instead, what have we had? Price gouging. You can't get a rapid antigen test for love or money. Yesterday, supposedly, rapid antigen tests were supposed to be available to concession card holders throughout pharmacies. I know my experience in the electorate where I'm contesting, Fowler, we rang around. Pharmacies didn't have tests. They simply didn't have them. So here's Scott Morrison, another announcement, no delivery, and it's the Australian people that are being left behind.
You've been the leader of your party in New South Wales, but you know how campaigns work. Today, this speech from the opposition leader about more optimism, it seems to me. He's copped flack for being too negative. Is this an important pivot a few months out from the election to say we're more than just about gripes?
Well, I think what we saw today was really, we're in the fourth quarter, aren't we? And what has Anthony always said? We'll be kicking with the wind in the fourth quarter of this election campaign. And, that might sound like a football analogy. Maybe it doesn't mean a whole lot to some people, but I think it's an important one in the sense that, an election campaign does spread across a whole term of government. And really, as we come into what is an election year, not only should we be putting forward, as we are doing, holding the government to account as an opposition, but indeed presenting the alternate government, the alternate vision, the alternate plans for a better future for Australia. Anthony today made clear that if we are going to come out of this pandemic stronger and better, a stronger and better Australia, that relies on learning the lessons of the pandemic, strengthening Australian families, building a future made here in Australia, and secure Australian jobs. And today was very much Anthony laying out his vision for a better future for all Australians.
Kristina, Keneally, I appreciate your time. We'll be talking many times over the coming months.
No doubt. Thank you.